All right, welcome everyone to the Avid Tech Talk webcast series. These sessions were created for Avid customers and partners who administer, design, use, and implement Avid products. These sessions were also created to help you be more successful with the deployment and use of Avid products. And in today's session, we'll focus on Pro Tools and taking a closer look at maximizing your video engine performance. Today's session is a live webcast presentation, and this session is not designed with polished marketing content. Instead, these sessions are less formal and focused on providing participants with technical content and as much demo material as possible. I'm Terry Coleman, Channel Program Manager in Avid Global Services, and I'll be your host for today's session. Today's technical content will be presented by Andy Baker and Steffen Wagner. Andy and Steffen are both audio experts in Avid's customer care organization, working with escalated support cases and specializing in Pro Tools interop workflows that involve ISIS, interplay, and video. Andy holds a Tonmeister degree and has worked for Avid for 15 years. Prior to joining Avid, Andy worked with a key Pro Tools reseller in London. And Andy is also a key musician who plays cello, guitar, bass, and piano with various ensembles in his spare time. Steffen has worked for Avid for over 6 years and holds a BS of Science degree in electronics engineering and an MA in post-production sound design. Outside of Avid, Steffen works as a dubbing mixer in TV post-production, predominantly short form and film trailers in London. I'll now turn the session over to Andy and Steffen.
Hello everyone, my name is Steffen and I'm sat here with my colleague Andy.
Good day everyone.
And today's subject is going to be the Avid video engine. We are going to just cover what it generally is, how it works. We'll look a little bit at the architecture. Then we'll take a look at video codecs and formats that are supported and that we should use. We go a little bit into how we can optimize the video engine for best performance. And then we do some troubleshooting training that is specific to AVE problems. And after the session, there will be a little bit of a Q&A session where you get a chance to ask us questions and we will try to answer them. So at this stage, I'm going to turn it over to Andy and you get us started.
Sure. Thanks, Steffen. So what is AVE? Let's dive straight in. And how does it work? AVE simply stands for Avid Video Engine. It's the new video engine that was introduced a couple of years ago with Pro Tools 11. Essentially, it is the engine from Avid Media Composer that's been specifically optimized for Pro Tools, and therefore it supports many of the same formats that Media Composer does. So the compatibility between Media Composer and Pro Tools is much improved, and in many cases avoids the need to have to retranscode or remix down any video. It also brings with it support for additional hardware, so the latest generation of Avid video peripherals, Mojo DX, Nitrous DX, and also third-party hardware that supports OpenIO, such as those devices from Blackmagic Design and AJA.
Andy, you've said it at the top of the slide, it was introduced with Pro Tools 11, but we've been able to play back video in prior versions to that. How was that handled differently in terms of from an operational standpoint and from a technical standpoint? Can you give us a bit of an overview of that?
Sure. So one of the big differences really is that we were very heavily reliant before Pro Tools 11 on external processing of the video. Most notably using QuickTime, the QuickTime engine, which meant we did run into performance issues of a certain nature. We were at the mercy of a process external to our own, essentially, which did lead to a few problems. We did have, it is fair to say, we did have an Avid video engine of sorts if you had specific hardware like a Mojo SDI or the old AV Option V10 box, for those that remember that. But it was pretty restricted and quite narrow in what you could do with that. So with 11, we introduced the new video engine. It gives us full support for HD workflows for both Avid and QuickTime file types. Much better compatibility with Avid Media Composer. We can harness the graphics card now. We have a GPU acceleration option. Format conversions, pretty simple now from the Pro Tools Bounce window. And also, yeah, going back to the hardware, we have a wider range of support for various PCIe and Thunderbolt devices.
Great. I guess that's quite a lot. Maybe let's have a look at let's look at the architecture a little bit. Let's look at how the AVE actually runs.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, one of the big differences really is that AVE essentially runs as a separate process. It's for all intents and purposes a separate application that runs alongside Pro Tools. You can actually see if you go into the Mac Activity Monitor, or on Windows the Task Manager, you can actually see that process running as a separate entity.
Can we have a look at that in one of our systems?
We can. We have the technology here. We can actually flip over. We have a Mac system available to us today. This is a Mac Pro system with a Blackmagic card. So on this system, if I bring up the Activity Monitor, you can see here I already have the video engine enabled for Pro Tools, enabled for this session. You can see it there running as a process.
Where would you enable it in Pro Tools?
In Pro Tools, it's from the setup menu. We go into Playback Engine, and we have this checkbox here.
Okay.
That just instigates the launch if it's not already running. On a Windows system, it's the same obviously to enable it, but then you can, if you go into the Windows Task Manager, again, we can just see it there as a separate process.
Okay, so with this actually being practically a separate application, video, audio, synchronization, that is a question that comes up. How is that achieved? How do we sync these two applications?
Okay, so architecturally, what's going on under the hood is we're using an existing architecture called Satellite, which a lot of you are probably familiar with. Do you want to give us a few words about what
maybe
Satellite is?
we should mention this quickly here. This is usually a protocol that we use to synchronize two or more Pro Tools systems, or a few Pro Tools systems with a media composer system.
Yeah.
So that's achieved using a network protocol, which is called Satellite, and it's connected via Ethernet practically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, back to you.
Yeah, so what I've brought up here is the peripherals window here. You can see here that you can designate up to 12 systems to be part of a regular satellite network. And down here you specify, obviously this would be for external systems that are external to each other, connected to the same local network. You specify which network port you want to use. And you also specify this thing called a TCP UDP port. This is like an identifier number for the packets that satellite is using, which identifying port it's using.
All right, let's just make this really clear. This page, or this tab, is obviously for the traditional use of satellite.
Correct.
To connect systems.
Yes.
So this has technically nothing directly to do with the video engine, but there's a few things we have to bear in mind when we look at that.
Yes, this port number, which defaults to that number, 28282, the video engine, obviously that is running inside this same computer. It's actually also using satellite network, as we've discussed, and it's using a port number that's 2 greater than that number. So in this case, it will actually be using TCP UDP port 28284. The reason this is important, let's think about a facility that has multiple Pro Tools systems in multiple rooms, and they may be using a combination of satellite and a combination of, maybe some of the smaller edit rooms just have a single Pro Tools system in them. You don't want to have a clash of ports. I mean, obviously to keep systems separate, you might want to, change the port numbers for the different configurations you've got, but you need to be careful to avoid any overlap with the Avid Video Engine that uses this hidden...
Yeah, just always bear in mind a Pro Tools system that plays back video will use this port and 2 above.
Yeah.
So when you select other ports for other rooms,
yeah,
you may want to just, use something that are completely different.
Yeah, exactly. Go wildly different to the default. Absolutely. Okay, another key difference actually. Let's just dive back to the presentation here. So we've already talked about satellite. The other key difference really that came along with AVE is the way that media is linked. So again, we are using it's a pre-existing technology that Avid introduced some years ago called Avid Media Access, or AMA. We should probably what do you think?
I think we should. This coming from Media Composer, we should probably, for those who are not so familiar with Media Composer, give them a quick overview how the file management in Media Composer is achieved. Can you quickly...
Yeah, let's go there. So Media Composer traditionally, let's just talk about pre-AMA, you'd have like, let's say you've got one media drive. On that one media drive, you'd have a single folder, which might be an Avid Media Files or an Omfy Media Files, depending on how you're working. And that would contain all of your media files for all projects.
So that's a big difference to Pro Tools. In Pro Tools, we're more used to organizing a media by session.
Yes, so you keep all your media, specific self-contained in its own session.
So, and how did the AMA? What was the purpose of that being introduced?
So that was introduced because editors, video editors, wanted a way to be able to link to files that were outside of that big media files folder. They wanted to be able to quickly link to QuickTime files, XDCAM files, this kind of thing, without having to import them into Media Composer and having them converted into a supported MXF, blah, blah, blah. So AMA was introduced with the concept of plugins which handled the different file types. So you could link to all these different types of media directly without having to essentially import into the media files
and
location.
At a location, wherever you...
Exactly. So it made sense when we brought AVE into Pro Tools to be able to do it that way. We don't want to have to rely on an Avid Media Files folder for all our video files.
So, sort of like just make use of that existing protocol.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the reason we're talking about this is because it is important. Let's just jump back on the Pro Tools system here. This system does happen to have Media Composer co-installed. If we have a look in Finder, we're actually on the Yosemite partition here. Dive into the library folder. Whoops, go into application support Avid, and we have this folder here called AVX2 plugins. So this is a location that stores things like video effects. It stores also OpenIO plugins for third-party hardware support, and also these AMA plugins that Media Composer uses to link to these files directly. These, however, are not the plugins that the Pro Tools video engine uses.
They're somewhere else.
They are somewhere else. So let's get a bit geeky here. If we dive into our applications folder here, find the Pro Tools application. I'm going to right-click it, and I'm actually going to dive inside the Pro Tools package. Dangerous. Contents, frameworks. And we actually have the video engine folder down here. This is the actual Avid Video Engine application, if you like.
Okay.
Again, we can dive inside that, deeper down the rabbit hole. Contents, shared support. Again, we have another one of these AVX2 plugins folders. And there you see that we have this AMA folder. And these three guys here are the plugins that AVE uses to link to media files. This is important.
The Pro Tools AVE, yeah.
The Pro Tools AVE. So when Media Composer doesn't touch this. The thing is, though, that Pro Tools AVE does also look in the shared AVX2 plugins folder. So when we get to the troubleshooting section, that is something we need to bear in mind, that, if you put any third-party plugins or other OpenIO plugins,
okay,
yeah, it's something to bear in mind.
Well, something that sticks out here is we'll have a plugin which, just judging by the name, is responsible for linking to QuickTime files,
yep.
And then we have two plugins that are responsible for linking to MXF files. So that is not what Media Composer does, is it? Media Composer, when it plays back MXF files, it always plays them back from that managed location. So in that sense, Pro Tools must be quite different.
Right. Yeah. This leads us. Sometimes we get cases coming in where people say, well, I've got these MXF files from wherever. They're in my Avid Media Files folder. In Media Composer, I have a sequence, can play them, no problem. I export that sequence, I bring that across to Pro Tools, and Pro Tools cannot play them. They won't import. It says some error message, or they don't play well. And that is inherently down to the way that we are linking to the files via AMA, rather than using the managed mechanism that the Media Composer uses for regular Avid MXF files.
Okay, so maybe we should summarize this, because I think it's quite a lot to take in. So we have taken advantage of an existing technology, AMA, because Pro Tools inherently wants to be able to link to files wherever. We have also written another plugin that can link to MXF files wherever, or at whatever location we wish to, which Media Composer doesn't do, but it's what Pro Tools still wants to be able to do. Yeah. So in that sense, particularly, Pro Tools is quite different and involves different tool to playing back MXF files, and that can induce different problems.
Yeah, absolutely. So there we go. We've gone quite deep, hopefully not too deep this early on. Shall we maybe talk about some of these different file types and codecs?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's progress the slide here then. So Steffen, tell us about codecs that are tested by Avid.
Cool. So generally, I think this is very important, because whenever we run into performance issues, or whenever we run into error messages or something, the first thing you want to ask yourself is, what codec am I using? What video format am I using? And when it comes to codecs, there's two file types we have to distinguish between: QuickTime and Avid MXF. And they support different video codecs. So DNX HD is for both the preferred codec, because mainly it gets the most testing with
our own. It's an Avid developed codec. So.
Apple ProRes for QuickTime, XTCam HD and XTCam EX for MXF. They're very commonly used amongst our clients. AVC Intra 100 is also fairly common. IMX and JFIF is, I think, more there for legacy reasons. DV25 and DV50 for QuickTime often being used for SD playback. And one to point out is the H.264 codec. It says their performance may vary. This is mainly because it's a long GOP format. It means that it doesn't look at the video picture by picture. It looks at a range of pictures.
Subsequent frames are based on, like keyframes.
For its compression.
Exactly.
But also, at encoding level, there are quite a few options one can choose from, and they do have an impact on the playback performance. So this is something. It is a tested codec and it can work, but it's also, if there are problems, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
We will.
So let's just move on to the supported video resolutions and rates. I'm not going to go into all of them. These are basically the standard rates. On the two right columns here, you see the HD resolution and rates, and on the first two columns, these are the SD resolutions and rates. What is important here is just that when working with video and Pro Tools, we need to conform to one of these standards. If we just record a video, which on our phone, and it may have a frame rate of 15 frames or something,
something
and
non-standard,
a random resolution, Pro Tools will not like that. I'm not sure, it may not even play it back. So at that stage, we have to re-encode it into one of the standard formats.
Should we have a look at that?
Yeah,
First of all,
how can we find out?
How do we find out? Somebody we're working with has given us a video file. We have no information about that video file. How are we going to find out what sort of file it is and whether it's going to work in Pro Tools? Let's jump back across to the Pro Tools system here. Here we have a video file. If I open it up in the regular free QuickTime player available for Mac and for Windows, a quick and dirty way to see some information is just to use the inspector from QuickTime. It shows us here it's an H.264 file. We can't see any specifics about how the H.264 was encoded. We can see, however, it's a 1280 by 720. We can see that the frame rate is 23.98.
So that means it is actually a supported format as such.
Right, we test H.264,
it's a standard resolution.
And it's standard resolution. It should work just fine. So, based on that, we might bring that into Pro Tools, and it may work just fine. We may find that we have some difficulties with it. So if we do have difficulties, then maybe we want to consider re-encoding it.
How would we do that?
Well, there are countless tools and utilities out there that can do that sort of thing. Things like MPEG Stream Clip and Handbrake, QuickTime itself. QuickTime 7, for example, you can go and do an export from. Built into the Mac OS, I quite like this feature. Actually, you can right-click on a video and there's this kind of option embedded in the contextual menu here, which allows us to encode. So we can basically re-encode and create a new version of this picture, of this new video. And in here, oh look, we can re-encode it as ProRes, which is one of the preferred codecs, it has to be said. This is fine. I mean, it's going to take you a bit of time, obviously, to convert. That's kind of the consequence. And the file size as well is probably going to be a whole lot bigger than the original H.264. But you're going to have a file that hopefully will work much better with.
Well, it's
the
also,
engine.
I think that's one thing why people like 264 a lot of the time is because it is quite small and relatively good quality.
Yeah.
However, there is something that has to be considered. Because it is so compressed, it will take a lot of processing power to decode again. So it is, we'll end up with a bigger file size, but it might be the preferred choice. Is there a way of doing this within Pro Tools as well?
There is. So as I said, kind of near the beginning, what you can do is just use the regular bounce functionality of Pro Tools. So, if I select this, by the way, this video track we're looking at here is based off of that single H.264. The reason we see all the edits is because it's previously been edited in a Media Composer system. We've
just
brought
came
it
in
across.
like that. Yeah,
exactly. But it's only actually linking to a single file. But it's just been edited. So what we can do, as I say, file, bounce to QuickTime.
Okay.
If I make sure that the same as source is not checked, that then opens up the possibility to change the compression type and the codec I'm using basically for the output. So here, because I've installed the Avid codecs, which come with the Pro Tools installer, I can choose DNX HD, for example, and then I've got a list of different resolutions here of DNX HD. We can see actually here on the project rate pop-up of the video track that this Pro Tools has detected the original H.264 as a 720p 2398. So, I probably want to stick the same. You can see I've got these options here. 60 and 90 designate the data rate.
It's kind of the quality, but
yeah.
I guess for Pro Tools playback, all of them will be very good.
Yeah, and then you've got like 8-bit or 10-bit. That's like dynamic range in terms of color and luminance.
Sure.
I'm not going to do this now again because it will take a little bit of time, obviously.
And you have already done it,
I've done it. Here's one I prepared earlier, as they say. So let me, I've actually got a hidden video track here. How sneaky. So here we go. Here's another video track with my pre-bounced DNX HD. You can see it's bounced it as a continuous file. It's a single file, continuous. And hooray, we can import with the Pro Tools HD system. We can have up to 64 tracks in the session. Only one of them can be actually active.
So we can keep the cuts actually, even though they're not playing back. But we have the preferred codec now. And
absolutely.
we've done this using the Pro Tools bounce option. There is this little tick box over here. I don't seem to see this down here, even if I zoom in. No. There must be a reason for that.
Of course, there's a reason for it, Steph. Yeah. Should we talk about it?
Yeah. Go on,
so absolutely. So yes, we see that here. We also see it in the clips list over here. You can see we've got the little tick, the tick mark. You can actually on the view menu here. Whoops. You can in the clip sub menu, if you turn on and off processing state, that gets rid of that. It's basically the same thing that Elastic Audio uses. What does it mean? Let's just jump back across to here. This means that particular file is what's known as an optimized codec. This is a key thing to bear in mind when you're working with the video engine. An optimized codec, also known as sample mapped, basically provides optimal playback performance. The video engine has been written to work best with these optimized codecs. So what codecs does it apply to? It applies to all Avid MXF formats. In terms of QuickTime file types, it's DNX HD, ProRes, DV, AVCI, XDCAM, etc. That's not an exclusive list. That contrasts with non-optimized codecs, which are actually, interestingly, processed outside of AVE.
How?
So essentially, we are relying, once again, like we did prior to Pro Tools 11, on the QuickTime engine to do that decompression and to play that out. So for that reason, performance is not guaranteed, because we're losing control of that. We're handing it off to a different engine to process.
Yeah, and exactly. It involves different means of processing, and therefore it can involve different issues, different trouble that is very relevant for troubleshooting. I think that's worth pointing out here, because when we started supporting Pro Tools 11 and we got support cases relating to the video engine, we still sometimes ask for the QuickTime engine or for the QuickTime version, and often got asked back, well, that shouldn't be relevant. I'm on Pro Tools 11 here, so that shouldn't really matter. But this breaks it down quite nicely, that it can actually matter depending on what codec you're using. So really, what we want to always do, we want to always stick to optimized codecs to actually take full advantage of the engine of the video engine and to its full extent.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So in terms of codecs that are non-optimized, just a couple of examples there. H.264, as we've been talking about, and also photo JPEG. There is another thing I want to mention at this point. We have seen cases where you bring in a video file that you think should be optimized. It's in that list in the top section there, but it does not exhibit or show the little tick mark. This can be due to a couple of things. Either it could be that there was the file was encoded with an alpha channel, or if it was encoded, with multiple codecs, at least one of which was a non-optimized codec, that can result in the engine basically saying, well, this is a non-optimized file, I'm going to hand that off to be processed externally. So in that case, the best thing really is just to re-encode.
Encode, yeah. So you kind of really want that tick box. You want to see that tick box. Otherwise, you've got work to do.
That ticks are good, right?
Yeah. All right, optimizing video engine performance. Well, I guess it's fair to say that optimization starts with speccing the system correctly. And, by that I mean the hardware, really. The most important components here are, I guess, the CPU and the GPU, because there's a lot of processing for the decoding involved, depending obviously on the codec, but still, generally speaking, there is quite a bit of performance that the CPU and GPU have to deliver.
The fastest machine you can get, the better,
Basically. Hard drive speed is very relevant, because unlike with audio, video is not part of the disk cache, which we have at least when we have a Pro Tools HD system. So it is always played back directly from the hard drive, and therefore we want, guarantee that there is a decent speed. Probably a good idea even to have a dedicated video hard drive for, where we have all the
specific for video files. Yeah, that is recommended.
The amount of RAM is in so far important that the video engine just uses up quite a lot of it. And we never want to run low on RAM, so we'll just have to have enough, especially if we're using disk cache as well, just for the sake of not running low on memory.
Absolutely.
I guess that's a bit of a no-brainer. I mean, avoid running at least any unnecessary applications in the background. Because they may be drawing performance as well, but also because they may be accessing shared resources and yeah, I mean, what else there's to say?
Well, background processing of any kind, really. I mean, we have a link later on to the computer optimization guides that we put in the knowledge base, where we do talk about, disabling any unnecessary background services and startup items on both Mac and Windows. So yeah, just bear that in mind.
Well, we've talked about this, I think, enough. User-supported and ideally optimized codec at standard resolution. If a non-optimized codec is used, try to use the lower compression. Makes sense.
Yeah, lower compression meaning, essentially the file is going to be bigger because it's not as compressed, but the engine will have less work to do to decompress.
If using video hardware, it must be locked to an appropriate video reference, just to ensure that both the systems, the audio and the video, is playing back in sync. I mean, that video reference obviously needs to be a common reference with Pro Tools, usually via sync. This can also lead to performance issues, I think.
Yeah, clocking.
Sync is mainly sort of the point here, but it can, when sync issues are involved, clocking can have an impact on performance.
Absolutely, yeah. We've seen that many times.
And then there is a few things we can do within Pro Tools to optimize video engine performance. Let's have a look at that. Andy, do you want to take over here? Or?
Sure, why not? So yeah, we already mentioned some of the features on the video track itself. So you need to have the I/O pane visible on the video track to see these three important buttons. Project rate, we'll have a look at that in a second. Actually, we'll dive back into Pro Tools in a second once we get there. Is important. It is auto detected when you've imported.
Take a look at it.
Yeah, we'll do it in a minute. Yeah. The one below that is the quality menu. So the quality menu again has an impact on performance according to what you choose for that one.
Okay.
And also, Pro Tools has its own set of preferences specific to video performance, which again we can go through.
Shall we have a look at it then?
Yeah, let's dive back across to the system here. So here we go. Here's the project rate selector on our track. At the moment, so when this file has first come in, it's decided that, okay, this is a 720p 2398 file. I'm going to set it to that, and it doesn't give us at this point any other options. However, we may have difficulties depending on how we're viewing on our output.
So if we've got, for example, a projector that just plays back power, that requires power at the input, what can we do?
Well, we can force the video to play out at a different resolution and rate. To do that, if you hold down the command key on a Mac system or the control key on a Windows system, you can then see, oh look, we have a lot more available resolutions to pick from, and then we can
All right, let's put this to 25 power. And so this obviously hasn't changed the video file resolution or frame rate, because that's still here sitting at 23.98.
Correct.
So I guess Pro Tools must do like a real-time conversion.
Yeah, there's a real-time, which again is going to be a bit of a performance hit potentially. So it's something to bear in mind. You should normally go with the auto-detected rate, unless there's...
Or if you need to have a different output format, then it's probably good practice to convert it.
To re-encode, at the appropriate rate, for sure. Yeah. While we're kind of on this, I was just going to say, Steffen, why is this in red?
This is...
This
is actually nothing to worry. I mean, red obviously is a red flag, so there is something wrong, but it's not so relevant for performance. What this means basically is that when we look in the session setup window, that our session timecode rate is different to the video frame rate. That in turn only means that our grid will sort of be divided by 25 frames per second, whereas our file has a different frame rate, and that doesn't really make any sense. So it's just telling us, do you maybe want to change this? And when you do it, then it goes wide. It doesn't really have an impact on performance though, but it's worth mentioning.
There's a question here as well. So when you clicked on that, I can see it only goes up to 30. If I'm working with like let's say 1080i 50 or 59.94.
Yeah, you always have to go. Well, you always should go to the base rate, and so that will be 25 in your example.
Okay.
And
halve it down basically.
Then it will also turn white. If you do want the full rate to be shown, you can go to the timecode 2 rate, and there you have all the options.
Yeah, you can go right up to 60. Sure. Okay, good. The next box down is the quality menu, like we discussed. So there's 4 options in here. Full quality is the default. That's regular 8-bit output. There's a 10-bit output as well. That is dependent on having hardware. So either Blackmagic, AGA, DX hardware attached. Draft, you may want to choose if you're seeing performance issues. That will actually reduce the output down to a quarter of the information being passed, essentially. So it'll look a bit poorer in quality, lower
but
quality.
maybe good enough to
good
work
enough
with.
to actually work to, especially if you're very interested in sync and tight sync. The best performance option is actually reserved for DX hardware, so Mojo DX. Nitrous
and
DX.
What's the difference between that and
that's
draft?
16th.
So even more.
It's even more. So I mean, actually, the Windows system here is using a DX, so we can actually just show. We have
We have the option there.
The option.
Okay.
Again, while we're just in this section, we have the output settings as well. This is just worth reviewing when you're optimizing the system. This is for the Mojo here. We're setting it, we're locking it to a reference signal as Steffen described. And we've got some color space options as well. On the Blackmagic system, click on that. It actually launches the system preference. This is the DetLink system preference, and we can go in here and review the settings that we're using for the physical hardware that we're using. We have seen in the past certain options in here that can cause trouble, unexpected behavior, that kind of thing. So again, it's just worth going through those and seeing if changing them makes any difference.
One thing worth mentioning on the quality is sometimes when there's like slightly nonsensical output, like where the video is, for example, really small or something, sometimes just toggling this from one to another.
We've seen that a few times,
will resolve the issue.
Yeah, like the picture coming out of your card is just like a tiny little box in the corner, and just toggling the quality menu is just essentially giving the hardware a bit of a kick and fix the problems.
Let's have a quick look at the preferences.
Sure.
And then...
So there, under the operation tab, so this is where you can decide whether or not you want to use your graphics card, your GPU, for Video Engine. You don't... if you're having problems, you might want to try disabling that.
Yeah, I was going to say this can kind of be beneficial or not, because if your graphics card isn't sort of up to spec, this may introduce more problems than help.
Yeah, so it's worth toggling to see what works best. Absolutely. The sub option here, prevent tearing out, is just an algorithm that if you've got panoramic shots, for example, and you're seeing kind of splitty screen, the picture's kind of getting torn apart. You can enable that to stop that from happening. Enable hardware during scrubs. So initially we were having some issues when scrubbing through hardware. So that, I think that still defaults to being disabled, which basically means when you scrub, it will actually bring up a little scrub window, a video window on your monitor to scrub by, rather than using the output of your hardware.
And then there's the latency.
The latency, again, defaults to shortest, because obviously you want to ideally have the shortest amount of time between you pressing play and
you want the system to be responsive.
Exactly, you want the responsive.
But what options do we have?
But we have up to, so if you're seeing like synchronization errors, just bearing in mind that we've got this satellite communication between the two applications, you may want to try increasing that to see if it helps with...
it just gives the satellite protocol a little bit more time to sync up, I guess.
Exactly. I mean, that's... quite often, if you've got a very heavily edited track, this track 2 here, it's quite heavily edited, that can lead to more errors than having a flattened track. So okay, Steffen, do we want to dive into the nitty-gritty of actually fixing problems? How can we troubleshoot common problems with the Video Engine?
Sure. Let's go back to Pro Tools for that.
Yeah.
Just do it there.
Okay, sure, why not?
So the first one that we have on the list is switching from blocks to frames, which we do here. Pro Tools, when you work in frames, Pro Tools will have to draw all these little thumbnails, and there is actually a particular error message. I think it's something along the line of Pro Tools can't
generate thumbnails. I know the one you mean. Yeah.
So if that comes up, definitely, as a means of troubleshooting, just switch it to blocks and see what happens. But I would say, if you don't really need them for orientation or something, it's generally a good idea to have them off, because they do take up processing power.
Yeah.
Especially, actually, and that brings me to the next point, when working in one of the continuous edit window scrolling modes. Because currently this is set to continuous, which means when I play back, Pro Tools has to redraw the screen continuously. And if I now also switch on frames, it will have to draw the frames continuously. And that can actually draw quite a lot of power.
Yeah.
Processing power.
Impact on performance, that's for sure.
I'd say the window scrolling modes, they're not, that some people obviously have preferences there and they would want to work like this. So this may be more a means of troubleshooting than a performance optimization, but it is something that you should always use.
It's something to consider.
If issues come up. What else was there on the list? Video window.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get this up by hitting
It's
Apple
Apple
9.
9, there it is, yeah.
So on the video window, something to bear in mind is we have different sizes.
How did you get that little menu up?
Oh, I just right click.
Right clicked, okay, great.
So actual size, that means it's just playing it out as is. I can half it and I can quarter it. Obviously, with it being a different size, Pro Tools will have to do some work there, but it's because it's halved or quartered, divided by 4, it is kind of, the maths there is quite simple, so processing will not be as intense.
Exactly.
Whereas if we're doing what you've been showing there, if you just select like a customized
a random
size,
kind of size by just dragging it out,
then the maths might be more difficult, and Pro Tools will...
It's more strain. Yeah, more strain on the system.
So try and avoid that. Try to stick to one of these suggested by Pro Tools.
Full, half or quarter, yeah.
Exactly.
If possible, yeah.
Classic thing really. If there's a problem, open a new session and import the video file into that session. Does it still occur? Which gives us a hint. Does it actually have to do something with Pro Tools, or maybe with the video file, or maybe with the session? Vice versa, if you can obviously keep the session and maybe re-encode the file and see if the problem goes away. Maybe even use a different codec, or maybe stick to the same codec,
Yeah.
or just re-encode it so you
bouncing it out, yeah,
use a new file.
Yeah, and just re-encode it. I mean, with all of these troubleshooting tips, obviously, it's predominantly about kind of, the old divide and conquer approach. We need to try and eliminate what is the source of the problem, essentially. So, I mean, that kind of leads on to the next slide here. Some more kind of deeper troubleshooting you might want to go into. If you're using hardware, if you're calling into customer care, one of the first questions you will probably be asked is, can you try disabling your hardware? Does the problem go away if the hardware is not involved? Disable it, or even remove it, disconnect it if you can. Does that solve the problem? If it does, then we need to start looking into things like drivers for the hardware, settings, like we've shown you the settings window. In terms of drivers, quite often we've seen that latest drivers don't always...
especially with third party, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes they do introduce new problems and then they get fixed at a later stage. So sometimes it's actually wise to consider going back to older versions of drivers just to see how performance changes, because it's quite a sensitive area. So a lot of it is kind of suck it and see, and it comes down to a lot of the stuff we've talked about earlier as well, about optimizing and choosing the right codec and things. In terms of storage, this is another kind of troublesome area. Things like illegal characters. I know, this seems like it's a 1990s thing, but it does still cause problems if you've got a drive that's got slashes or exclamation marks in its name, or even a folder that's got those characters in where the video files are. It can cause AVE all ends of problems. Having large numbers of files as well, or a disk that's nearly full. Antivirus, like scanning software, get rid of all of that. A quick and dirty test really to eliminate storage. Try copying the video file just to your desktop, unmount everything else that you possibly can, including network storage, and see if the problem still reproduces, just to see if it's specific to a certain drive or volume. We talked about this near the beginning, actually, the AVX2 plugins folder. We'll just reiterate it here. Again, more so if you're in a co-install environment with Media Composer, if you've got third-party like video effects plugins, or other OpenIO hardware plugins, or other AMA file type plugins to link to different files.
Even still looking at that.
Yeah, right, exactly. The AV is still looking in that folder, so it's worth, you could try removing anything extra you put in there, or just renaming it temporarily, and to see if the problem goes away at that point. The last one, which seems a little bit obtuse, although it does make sense, honest, because obviously AV is based on the satellite protocol. We do have a known issue at the moment, actually, which is being worked on, and hopefully we'll have a fix pretty soon, specific to network adapters, where the video engine can, under certain circumstances, take quite a long time, in excess of a minute and a half sometimes, to actually initialize. As I say, we should have a fix for that coming soon, but one thing we found is that disabling any unnecessary network adapters, or just for a test, disable everything to do with network, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, just to see if that is causing you heartache with regards
Yeah, I
to
think this is
using.
quite an important one to emphasize here, because it seems somewhat counterintuitive, because it's a bit like, I'm troubleshooting video, why are you talking to me about network? But as you mentioned, we're using a network protocol under the hood, so it is relevant, and one must be insistent on that.
Absolutely. We're running a little tight on time, so we'll just this.
Yeah, this is a little bit more generic stuff that applies to all kinds of problems. Maybe the location of the video engine folder. That's something you maybe want to quickly talk about.
This is where like your error reports, your log reports get stored, and certain other files. We have seen issues with that, so sometimes it's worth deleting that. Okay. On Windows, again, be aware of deleting that. You may have to actually repair the Pro Tools installation if you delete it, because it does contain certain files. But it's a good troubleshooting step. The KB article there is our generic troubleshooting. It shows you basically the locations of preferences you can trash.
Well, then we've got a few more generic points here. Maybe you want to mention that when we contact customer care.
So customer care, obviously these are the questions we would get you probably to try reinstalling Pro Tools, try creating a new user account, try a different computer if possible in the same session. Customer care do have the means to further debug video engine problems. We can actually get extended logs.
Logging.
Exactly. We can instigate a manual launch and get diagnostics from when the video engine is launching, that kind of thing. So if you are having issues that you can't resolve with any of the things we've discussed, then create a case and
get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely, get in touch.
So there's a few links in here that may be quite handy. Supported codecs. Well, it's basically all the stuff that
all the stuff we brought up. Yeah. The third one down there, as I say, is just the general optimization guides with some troubleshooting steps like ditching
and how to export log files,
and how to go and find the log files if customer care need those.
Quick review.
Yeah.
We have covered what the Avid Video Engine actually is and how it works under the hood. We talked a lot about codecs and formats, and we know now, or we have discussed why we need to stick to the standards and the supported codecs. We looked into optimizing AV for performance, and we've covered quite a bit of troubleshooting steps that are specific to Avid Video Engine. And I think that brings us to the end, and we can open it now to a bit of a Q&A session.
If you have a question, then put it into the Q&A chat window, and we'll see. We've got a couple minutes left, I think, that we can just answer a couple of questions. So there's some coming in already. Why is H.264 performance vary?
We've kind of covered that a little bit. Do you want to reiterate that?
Yeah, it's a long GOP, what's known as a long GOP, long group of pictures format. So basically it means that the way that the reason the file size is so small is because not every frame is fully encoded. It encodes a frame every now and again, and then all the in-between frames are kind of what's changed from the previous frame kind of thing. So the compression is much higher, the file size is smaller. But for editing, if you're making an edit in the middle of between two kind of main frames, then it's not optimum for that, and it does put a lot of pressure on the decompression.
Or also at encoding stage, there is quite a few options to choose from, and they do have, depending on what you choose there, has an impact on the performance of Pro Tools. Also remember, it is one of the non-optimized codecs. And that means it does not use the Avid Video Engine in its full extent. It does still rely on QuickTime. What else have we got here?
Is Photo JPEG not recommended anymore? It used to work well. We found some problems with Photo JPEG. It's not one of the optimized codecs. Some people do use it successfully, but just bear in mind that it's not really a recommended codec anymore.
And it's definitely not an optimized one,
absolutely.
Does this cache video as well? Well, that's quite a simple answer, and I did mention that already. It's a no. It doesn't. It plays back directly from the video, and therefore we do recommend to look out for a decent speed when it comes to the video drive and to probably have a dedicated video drive.
Yeah. Another one here actually, Steffen. So if I install additional QuickTime codecs, can AVE use them? And the answer to that is yes. In fact, let's just dive back over quickly. I know we've not got much time left, but yeah, when you install additional QuickTime codecs, let's just, whoa, what happened there? I'm not sure. Okay, let's bring up a window. Inside the library folder, there is a QuickTime folder. This is where your codecs get installed. There's also one inside of your system folder, library, QuickTime. Quick look, QuickTime. So yeah, if you install any additional codecs in there, yes, AV will be able to use them. Be aware that these can be a source of problem as well, so it's worth reviewing those, maybe even pulling codecs out if you are seeing problems with playback. Okay, I think there are a few more questions in the chat here, but I think we are getting close to the top of the hour. So. Any questions that we've not answered, we will actually take a note of, and we'll get them posted. The answers to those posted pretty shortly after this presentation. But Terry, we'll hand it back over to you. I'll just bring the deck back into view.
All right. Hey, thanks so much, Andy and Steffen, for conducting the Tech Talk session today. Any questions that Andy and Steffen were not able to answer will be sent out in a follow-up email in the next few days after they've had an opportunity to document the answers to each question. We hope you found the information valuable and useful as we plan our next webcast series. We want to make sure that we include topics most valuable to our customers, and we also want to make sure we get your feedback from today's session. You will see in the chat window that I've just sent out a link to a survey for today's session. So you're certainly welcome to fill that out now. When you close this session, you will also be prompted with the survey. So if it's more convenient to do it as you close this down, that's terrific. And finally, in 24 hours, you'll also receive a request to fill out the survey tomorrow. It's the same survey, so if you've already filled it out, please just disregard it. But we want to make sure that we get your feedback and we do it at a time that's convenient for you. Please take a brief minute to give us that feedback if you can. And if you found today's session useful, we also suggest additional training options that would help you be even more successful with Pro Tools. For those of you like self-study and are new to Pro Tools, we have the PT 101 Introduction to Pro Tools courseware on the Avid web store, available as a printed book or downloadable ebook. This is the first course in the series of 100, 200, and 300 level courses for those looking to gain user, operator, and expert certification experience in Pro Tools. Classes are available at Avid Learning Partners at over 500 locations worldwide, and feel free to check out a Learning Partner near you at the Avid website, which is on your screen. For those looking for technical certification as an Avid Certified Support Representative, or ACSR, we offer the PT 400 ACSR Pro Tools Systems course at Avid Regional Offices. This blended course has 3 days of self-paced online content, followed by 2 days of intensive hands-on instruction with installation, upgrades, and troubleshooting techniques for Pro Tools systems. Please go to the avid.com training site and find the course and enroll. We want to thank you for taking time to attend today's Tech Talk webcast. I hope you found the information valuable and useful. Please take time to visit the registration page, as we do have more sessions that will be coming up in the future. And as we plan the next webcast series, we'll want to make sure to include the topics that are most valuable to you. If you're not able to complete the survey following the webcast today, please take a few moments to complete the survey when you receive it and give your feedback. Please also send your questions, comments, and additional feedback on today's session to customer care at avid.com, and thank you again for attending today's session. This completes today's training. Thank you.